Here we are again at the back entrance of the Holden Arboretum. There's a little parking lot here. It's kind of cool. And you can park in it if you're a member and walk in through sort of the back entrance. And that's what I'm doing today. So I thought maybe I was done for the day, but I got a few projects done and I thought I would go out for another walk. And Holden is very huge. There's a lot of places to explore, so I thought I would come back here. I'm tempted not to say anything, but of course I have more to say. And I thought about what we could talk about on this walk. Maybe beauty, meditation, love. I think maybe meditation. So we touched on this a tiny bit in the last video where I said the universe is meditating. And I sort of indicated that meditation, the way people normally think of it, is not meditation. And I'll reiterate that here. And why is that? Because meditation, as we're discussing it here, is not something that there can be a method for or a prescription for or a series of steps. We talked about thought and the issues of thought, and that thought is often thoughts about ourselves are often the reason for the disorder in our lives, the self-centeredness. And so the natural question would be then, well, what do you do? Or, well, what's next? You know, thought is the cause of disorder. And we hinted at to observe the disorder without the past interfering, without judgment, is possibly the way to bring about order. Not in any positive sense, but sort of in a negative sense. By seeing the disorder, we bring about order. Well, how do we see the disorder? And in a sense, you could say that is meditation, that our head is filled with content. Our mind is filled with the past ideas about ourselves, just filled with endless memories. And that's the content of our consciousness. Meditation could be thought of as emptying the content of that consciousness. And if that consciousness is empty, then what's there? What is it? Well, that's not something you can explain, because to explain it would be to put it into words, which would simply be creating more content. So this is the conundrum, in a sense, with what we're discussing, because there's an end to knowledge. Actually, in I guess I don't want to say the Hindu tradition, because I'm not really well read on every tradition, but there's something called Advaita Vedanta, which I believe translates to the end of knowledge, or the completion of knowledge. At one point in my life, I studied Ramana Maharshi, and this was sort of what that was referred to, or I suppose where his teachings would fall under. And I think there's many other people in that realm, but it's interesting that they refer to it as the end of knowledge, or the completion of knowledge, because we also talked about that previously. To be free from the known is the end of knowledge. That the search for knowledge can be an endless quest, never reaching, the goal, because you can never expand your partial knowledge and reach the whole. And so this knowledge, we talked about it, we have to go without it. We have to end the knowledge. How does the knowledge end? And it's not knowledge about everything. It's not, erasing your memory. It's really ending this knowledge about ourself, or this sense of ourself. And that's the content we're really talking about here, is that if we can observe that content, how we view ourselves, how we view others, but mostly the self-centeredness that we have in ourselves, that's the disorder. That's those thoughts about ourselves, we could say psychological thoughts, are the troublemaker. And, we can't battle the troublemaker, because battling the troublemaker would simply be feeding the troublemaker. Any sort of conflict or division between the one who battles and the one who is being battled is division. So that's not it. So there's a process, not even a process, but just this observation that we talked about, this awareness of ourselves and who we are, is meditation. And what we're doing now is meditation. The discourses that we're having, the discussions we're having, these are all part of meditation. Meditation is life. It's not separate from life. It's not, I sit down for 10 minutes or 20 minutes in the morning, afternoon, and evening and repeat a mantra or perform some ritual. That's the brain operating. That's the past. That's history. It's not, people refer to that as meditation, but we're not talking about that here. We're talking about something different, which is the ending of all that. The ending of systems, methods, processes, and anything in time. We can also think of thought and time are really the same, right? The accumulation of memories in our brain is a process of time. And that is our memory. That is our thoughts. Our thoughts and time are the same. So when we say ending thoughts, we're really saying ending time, or outside of time, timeless. Not something that comes about with a cause, because anything that has a cause is sort of in this world of time, and also anything that has a cause ends. And what we're talking about is something we could say that has no beginning, has no end. It's not measurable, it's immeasurable. And perhaps the only way to understand it is to examine the thoughts that prevent the awareness, the hindrances. It's interesting, another Buddhist concept, which I hate to keep bringing all these up, but I think of the Buddhist hindrances, which I can't remember what they all are now. But there's all these specific things the Buddhists talk about that hinder the awareness, right? That prevent us from seeing truth. And I guess we're sort of talking about that here, that these hindrances are the content of consciousness that are the troublemakers. And if we observe them, not do battle with them, but just be aware of them, observe that this is what's happening in our mind, and what causes us so much stress and distress, then that is meditation. But it's not separate from our life. You can't turn it on and turn it off. It's an awareness we have to have all the time. So, and not that we make ourselves be aware, effortless awareness, if you want to say it that way. So, to me, walking in the park like this, not trying to be anywhere or do anything or accomplish anything or become better, certainly not to become better. That's the mind and the ego that drives better. Self-improvement may be one of the worst ideas ever developed. There is no self-improvement. And I hate to burst everyone's bubble, but this idea that there is a self that can be improved is once again just a misunderstanding of what the self is. The self is a collection of thoughts about you. How does that improve? By gaining more thoughts about you, different thoughts, good thoughts, bad thoughts. Once you see that it's just the very nature of that sense of self is the problem, there's no making it better or improving it. Understanding it. That's it. Understand the self for what it is, not what you want it to be or want to become. And just that awareness of not trying to be could be regarded as meditation. And one of the worst things is when you try to accomplish something in meditation. So you take classes in meditation, or, Vipassana, I don't know, 20-day, which I have not done, so I can only speak to a certain level. I thought about doing it at one point in time before I came to this understanding. But again, it was something like, well, if I go in, on these retreats and I sit silently and quietly, it's almost torturing yourself, for days upon end, hours silently, in a pose. Well, then that may be what I need to, to what? To improve, to become enlightened. The desire for enlightenment or awakening is still the ego. The desire to be in some better state, some different state. Again, it's just, you can't escape it. And what's surprising to me is that so many people have developed these systems and methods, and I mean, large communities of Buddhists and Hindus, and a lot of people around the world practice meditation, and it's doing something. You get what you are after. So they want to accomplish something, they want to have mystical experiences, they will have mystical experiences. They want paranormal abilities. Sometimes you can achieve paranormal abilities, but is that the goal? Is that what you want to do? Those are experiences, and anything that's an experience requires an experiencer, which is our friend the ego. So once again, if you want an experience, I want peace. Even saying I want to meditate so I can be peaceful is wanting something to be different than how it is. And that desire for peace is itself a magnification of the ego. And what if you don't get that peace? And sometimes we have to be okay with whatever there is. Things are not always peaceful. It's nice to have peace. Now I'm walking and it's peaceful and I'm enjoying that. And there's nothing wrong with enjoyment at the moment. But when I leave here, if I'm wanting that peace again, I'm wanting it to come back, that is desire, and that is the ego, and it's the memory of something peaceful or pleasurable, and we want it again. And I guess we're on to desire here, but that is what desire is, right? It's a memory of something pleasurable, and you strive for it, and you want it again. And that goes for peace or anything else. So we can't look at this as, I want to meditate so I can be peaceful, or achieve an enlightened state, or some transcendent consciousness, because all those are desires for something other than what is. We need to see what is. We need to observe what is without wanting it to be different or change one thing. Just observe. And what else can you do? It's all you really can do. Anything else is a creation of the mind, an illusion, a desire. When you want to achieve something, what you're saying is, it's a future event. I'm going to practice so that one day I will practice meditation, so one day I will be respected and revered as an expert meditator. Well, that's an achievement like any other. I mean, you might as well be a banker and, bank teller wanting to be the bank president one day, or, you're wanting something because you see it as an advancement or an elevated position, whether it's spiritual, material. It's the same thing. Wanting to achieve something, whether it's a spiritual achievement or an achievement in the material world, is exactly the same thing. And that's very important to see that, because all these systems and methods have the intention of improving you, achieving something. Oh, I've attended, I used to hear people Say, I've attended, 2 or 3 Vipassana classes. Okay, so that's, you're putting little marks in your belt, saying, well, I'm so great. I've done this. You haven't done it, so I somehow have this achievement over you. It's like, well, that's great, but what have you achieved? Are you peaceful? Are you, has conflict ended in your life? Are you okay with everything in your life? Like, because that's the issue, not whether you can sit still for an hour at a time without blinking or moving. And it's not to say that isn't, silence and quiet isn't part of it, but when you're trying to achieve that, it's that desire to achieve that. Silence may come about naturally when there's understanding and wisdom, and it doesn't have to be forced. And this is also something, if you go back to the Eightfold Path of Buddhists, where, wisdom is part of wisdom. There's sort of, you could divide I'm not going to go into the detail, but you could sort of say there's 3 categories, right? Wisdom, ethics, and concentration or meditation. And I always thought that was interesting. And it's seen as a wheel or a union. It's all those things. You can't just meditate without living an ethical life or not understanding, right? Wisdom is understanding, seeing how things really are, right? That is intelligence, not trying to make things be different or better. So all of those need to go together, and living a good life, wisdom, understanding, and what we might call meditation, or maybe a calming or silencing of the mind, an ending of thought. Not to make an effort to end thought, but ending. And really it's just quieting down this very noisy mind that's always thinking and trying to figure out what to do next in this busy world. And really, if we just say, let's just stop that. Let's stop the striving, stop the achieving, go for a walk, enjoy the moment without trying to capture it and carry it along. And there is a silence that's enjoyable, but just to be okay with whatever is happening, to not want it to be different, whether it's what we say good or bad or whatnot, to be in that, again, there's an equanimity is sort of a Buddhist word, and I hate to bring all these up, but it just comes to mind because these are words that are associated with these states of mind, if you want to look at it that way, of being okay with who you are and what you are now, like at this moment, not who you want to be later, or judging yourself and saying, I wish I was more spiritual, or that I was a better meditator, or whatever you may want to achieve. That achievement or betterment is a problem. It creates problems for you, because now you're not where you want to be, so you're struggling and striving, and just that very nature, it's so tricky, right? The ego is so clever because it wants you to think that you have achieved, or that you will achieve something. Yeah, the ego wants you to think that you have eliminated the ego. I've encountered so many people that believe that they have somehow achieved something, they're spiritually advanced or whatever, and I just kind of roll my eyes in a way, because it's just clear to me that anyone who says they are enlightened, or says they are awakened, or says they are, they're not. It's a clear sign, because it's just the ego speaking. It's just not that hard. It's not something you have to achieve. It's just a quietness of mind that arises or is there when you're just okay with who you are. now. And with all your flaws and issues and problems and anger issues and, everything about you that is you, you observe it and say, that is me, I am that. And also, I am not that, and because the I is that illusion again, that permanent individual, or whatever we want to say, is not a permanent thing, right? So I can't be anything because I am not a thing that can be. I can't be good or bad because those are thoughts. We're a bundle of memories, so it doesn't make sense. Once you see the self for what it is, it's not a thing that can be good or bad or better or worse. It is. It just is. It is. Your experiences, your past, your memories are there. They're not going anywhere. But you're not trying to change it anymore. And I think this is why where I am now, and I'm no expert in spiritual traditions, and no, I haven't explored everything that there was, but I went on a little exploration into different traditions. I studied shamanism a little bit, and Buddhism, and Hinduism, and I mentioned Ramana Maharshi, and Ram Dass, and all these different people, and different teachers, many Buddhist scholars. I won't even name them all. Thich Nhat Hanh is a very, I respect him as a Buddhist, and I mean, there's so many, and I could list them all off. Aya Khema, she was a female Buddhist that I read a lot of books. And what's interesting though is I just found myself hopping around from one teacher to another teacher, hoping I would read something or encounter something that was gonna let me achieve this enlightenment. I was studying jhana. Jhana is deep meditation. There's all these different states, and there's a whole system for that. And I was convinced that was the way to go. These deep meditative states, people can enter these states, and I have no doubt that they do. I can't say that I ever did. I practiced some of what had to be done, but and jhana is actually, it's interesting because the word Zen comes from jhana. Jhana is I don't know if it's, I'll just say the Indian word because I'm not sure if it's which language it comes from. But it means meditation, essentially, from what I understand. And then when it went to China, it became Chan. And then when it got to Japan, it became Zen, because they couldn't pronounce, from what I've heard, this may not be right, they couldn't pronounce Chan, so it became Zen. And so Zen Buddhism, in a sense, is rooted in this, I would say, mystical tradition of jhana, deep states of meditation. And it's interesting because some of these deep states of meditation that are discussed talk about timeless, spaceless, expansions of consciousness, to fill the whole universe, which in a lot of ways is, from a descriptive sense, somewhat what we're talking about here. But you just can't go about this saying you're going to practice and achieve that. These things may happen, and I can't say whether they're good or bad or whatnot, and people will practice and achieve them, but it doesn't, contain truth. It may, just in the way you can take drugs, you could take psychedelic drugs and alter your consciousness. I mean, in the same way, I think this is something Ram Dass discussed in his biography, which I found very interesting. Because a lot of people, even today, are advocates of psychedelic drugs. I am not. I've never taken anything like that, or really never taken any drugs at all. And I don't want to alter my consciousness in that way, that unnatural way. but a lot of people have and swear by it, right? And but I think what it is those are just, again, wanting different mental states or wanting your consciousness to be different. Anytime you want, you are desiring. So you have to sort of catch yourself in that sense. Like, what are you wanting? What are you wanting to achieve? Why are you wanting to achieve it? Because you're not happy with who you are now. You're not happy with your current state of consciousness. So you want an altered state of consciousness in some way. But I think if you observe the natural state of consciousness that you have, you don't have to want to be different. And it's just that giving up of a search, which the reason I mentioned all this is that I studied all this and then just became dissatisfied with it all, because they were all just systems and different systems, and it just became sort of just a strange thing, right? When in fact the simplest thing of all is to just stop, to end the search, stop the search, and then you're not moving anymore. You're not moving in any direction, left, right, up, down. And that stasis of that silence, there's a silence to ending that is beautiful, because there's nothing else to do. There's nowhere you want to be. There's nothing else you want to become. You are satisfied with who you are. This doesn't mean you curl up into a ball and become nothing, but your actions are driven from something other than just your personal desires. There's still life, there's still motion and activity, but it's not originating in the selfish desires anymore. It's someplace else or some other source, right? The entire universe is operating, a stream is moving, not because it desires to move, but because that is what it's in its nature to do. And we in our nature are capable of doing many things, but we hinder ourselves through these selfish actions and prevent ourselves from becoming a whole human being. We're often second-class human beings. We do what others tell us to do rather than just sort of being who we really are and who we can be. So I guess to return this to meditation, this is meditation. And not all the talking necessarily, but the inquiring into who we are deeply and without coming to conclusions, being in a state of observation, a state of awareness of what's happening right now, not what we want to happen or what has happened, but what is happening now, which is truth, the only truth. And to be aware of that ever-changing truth. Truth is a living thing. It's not static. It's not something you can find and write down. And it's not something you achieve through some enlightened mental state. It is actually what is happening right now, the way it is, not in some different way. So see that, observe what's happening, and you don't have to be in any particular place or any particular state, or the sun doesn't have to be shining. It can be a cloudy day. When you see everything as it is and you're okay with it, you're satisfied because you see the dissatisfaction of everything. That this is an impermanent world and constantly changing. There's nothing you can hold on to for security, so give it up. Stop searching for security. Then it's meditation. And it's not you are meditating. It is meditation. Is that state of mind, if you want to put it that way, that ends seeking, ends searching, and there's nothing else to do. And it's beautiful because you don't have to do anything anymore to achieve something. You know, it's an ending of struggle. And it requires no effort. It doesn't mean there's nothing to do. It's effortless action. Effortless action. Action that just occurs. It's not driven by a motive. Because anytime you have a motive or a will, you know, I will do something. The will is just concentrated desire. And it's the ego again. It's that I want, or don't want. Wanting and don't wanting are the same. So to be in a state of not wanting or not wanting, neither reward or punishment, may be meditation. So a lot of times it's just important not so much to describe something in the positive sense by saying meditation is this, that, and the other. It's sometimes good to come at it from the negative. What is it not? And this is actually in math, it's a common tactic as well, to proof by negation, you know, by saying there's a contradiction, this thing can't be true, so therefore you prove the opposite in some sense. And here, instead of defining meditation as being, you know, this, that, and other things, it's just the things it's not. And I think we discussed what it's not. It's not a system, it's not a practice, it's not something to be achieved, it's not something to improve yourself over time and get better at and then become an expert in. None of these things can be true meditation. So get rid of those notions and then see what's left after you eliminate what it isn't. So that's probably enough today to just talk about what the way I see, or the way it is. And maybe next time we'll talk about beauty. Alright, I think that's enough, and signing out.